The summer sun beat down mercilessly on Willow Creek as Belinda Davis stood frozen at the doctor's office door, her world collapsing around her. The words barren and impossible echoed in her mind like a death knell as she stumbled onto the dusty street, tears streaming down her face, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Willow Creek, Colorado Territory, 1875, was a town caught between the wild frontier and emerging civilization. Nestled in a valley with mountains rising in the distance, it had grown from a mining camp to a proper settlement with wooden sidewalks, a general store, saloon, and even Dr. Patterson's medical office, where Belinda had just received the devastating news. At 26, Belinda was considered a spinster by most, though her beauty hadn't faded chestnut hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, eyes the color of spring moss, and a determined chin that betrayed her stubborn nature. She'd arrived in Willow Creek 3 years prior, after her parents' deaths in Philadelphia left her alone with little inheritance and fewer prospects. Her Aunt Martha had taken her in, given her work at the town's only dress shop, and Belinda had rebuilt a semblance of life here. But today, that life seemed hollow. She'd always dreamed of a family of her own, children running around a cozy home, calling her Mama. Now Dr. Patterson, with his grave face and clinical words, had taken that dream from her. An illness in her youth, he explained, had left scars that would prevent her from ever conceiving. "Miss Davis!" a voice called out, but Belinda hurried on, not wanting anyone to see her tears. She nearly collided with a tall figure rounding the corner. "Whoa there!" said a deep voice as strong hands steadied her. "Are you all right, madam?" Belinda looked up into the face of a stranger, a man with sun-weathered skin, piercing blue eyes, and a concerned expression beneath his dusty Stetson. She'd never seen him in Willow Creek before. "I'm fine," she lied, trying to step around him. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine," he said softly. "Can I help somehow?" Something in his voice, the genuine concern, perhaps broke through her desperate need to escape. A sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. "No one can help me," she whispered. "No one." The stranger glanced around the busy street, clearly uncomfortable with her distress but unwilling to leave her alone. "I'm Kent Xavier," he said, removing his hat. "Just rode into town. Is there somewhere I can walk you to? Someone who might be waiting for you?" Belinda wiped her tears, embarrassed by her public display. "I'm Belinda Davis. I work at the dress shop down the street. And no, there's no one waiting. Just my aunt. And she's busy with customers." Kent nodded, replacing his hat. "Well, Miss Davis, I don't make a habit of prying into strangers' troubles, but I do believe everyone deserves a friendly ear now and then. Might I buy you a cup of coffee? The ride here was long, and I could use one myself." Belinda hesitated. She barely knew this man, this cowboy with trail dust on his boots and a kind smile that reached his eyes, yet something about him made her nod. "There's a cafe next to the general store," she said quietly. "They serve decent coffee." As they walked, Belinda became acutely aware of the curious glances from townsfolk. A proper lady didn't simply accompany a stranger to coffee, especially not with tear-stained cheeks. But propriety seemed hollow now, a set of rules for a life she would never have. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour. They settled at a corner table and a plump waitress named Mary brought coffee without being asked. "New in town?" Mary asked Kent, her eyes curious. "Just passing through," he replied with a polite smile. "Got some business with the Triple R Ranch." After Mary left, silence settled between them. Belinda stared into her coffee, wondering what madness had prompted her to sit with this stranger. "Triple R is the biggest ranch around here," she finally said. "Owned by the Richardson family for 3 generations. Kent nodded. "I've been hired to help break some horses. Been doing that work since I was 16. Before that, I grew up on a small ranch in Texas with my pa until he passed. I'm sorry about your father, Belinda said automatically. Been some years now. Kent studied her face. Miss Davis, I don't mean to pry, but sometimes telling troubles to a stranger is easier than telling friends. Whatever's burdening you, well, I'm a good listener, and I'll be riding out tomorrow, likely never to return. Perhaps it was his forthright manner, or the anonymity he offered, but Belinda found herself speaking. I just learned I can never have children, she said, the words burning her throat. I had scarlet fever as a child. The doctor says it damaged me. Fresh tears welled in her eyes. All my life, I've dreamed of having a family, a home filled with children. Now I know that can never be. Kent was silent for a long moment. Doctors don't know everything, Miss Davis. Belinda gave a bitter laugh. Dr. Patterson studied in Boston. He's quite certain. I've known folks who were told similar things, Kent said, his voice steady. A woman on a neighboring ranch in Texas was told she'd never bear children after a bad fall from a horse. She has 5 now. That's different, Belinda insisted. Maybe. Kent shrugged. But I've seen enough of life to know that sometimes the things we're most certain of have a way of surprising us. Are you telling me to ignore medical advice and hope for a miracle? Belinda asked, irritation creeping into her voice. Kent smiled. No, madam. I'm just saying that life has its own plans sometimes. You will have a family someday, Miss Davis. I believe that. You can't possibly know that. No, he agreed. I can't. But I've seen enough impossible things come true that I've learned not to be too quick to accept never as an answer. For some reason, his quiet confidence soothed her. It didn't change her diagnosis, but it eased the sharp edges of her despair. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Xavier, she said, wanting to change the subject. What brings a Texas cowboy to Colorado? For the next hour, they talked. Kent told her about growing up on the Texas plains, about his years working cattle drives, and about his special gift with horses. They're like people, he explained. Each one has their own fears and quirks. The trick is to understand them, not break them. Belinda found herself captivated by his stories and his respectful manner. Unlike many men she'd met, Kent actually listened when she spoke, asked questions about her life in Philadelphia, and seemed genuinely interested in her work at the dress shop. As afternoon waned, Belinda realized she needed to return to her aunt's shop. Thank you for the coffee and conversation, Mr. Xavier. It was unexpectedly pleasant. The pleasure was mine, Miss Davis. He stood as she did, tipping his hat. I hope tomorrow brings you a lighter heart. Belinda nodded, suddenly reluctant to part ways with this kind stranger. Good luck with the horses at Triple R. She walked back to the dress shop, her mind still heavy with her diagnosis, but somehow less overwhelmed by it. Aunt Martha gave her a curious look when she entered but didn't pry. They worked in companionable silence until closing time, fitting dresses and discussing orders with customers. That evening, as Belinda helped prepare dinner in their small home behind the shop, Aunt Martha finally spoke. I saw you with a stranger today. Quite handsome, if a bit trail-worn. Belinda felt her cheeks warm. He was just being kind. I was upset after seeing Dr. Patterson. Martha's face softened. Oh, my dear, what did the doctor say? The words caught in Belinda's throat. Saying them aloud to Kent had been difficult enough. Telling her aunt, who had never married or had children herself, seemed somehow worse. He confirmed what I feared, Belinda finally said. The scarlet fever. I can never have children. Martha set down her knife and embraced her niece. My sweet girl, I'm so sorry. The stranger, Mr. Xavier, he said doctors don't know everything, Belinda found herself saying. He said I would have a family someday. Martha pulled back, studying her niece's face. Did he now? And what does Mr. Xavier know about medicine? Nothing, I suppose, Belinda admitted. He works with horses at the Triple R, but he seemed so certain. Well, Martha said carefully, sometimes hope comes from unexpected places. Now, tell me about this Mr. Xavier. For the next few days, Belinda threw herself into her work, trying to push away thoughts of both her diagnosis and the kind cowboy who'd bought her coffee. She didn't expect to see Kent again. He'd said he was just passing through, so she was startled when he appeared at the dress shop door a week later. He removed his hat as he entered, nodding politely to Martha, who was helping a customer. Miss Davis, he said when he approached Belinda at the counter. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, she replied, surprised at how pleased she felt to see him. How is your work at the Triple R progressing? Well enough that they've asked me to stay on a bit longer, he said. They have a particularly stubborn stallion that needs special attention. I see. Belinda busied herself with folding a bolt of fabric. And you're good with stubborn creatures? A smile played at the corners of his mouth. I have some experience in that area, yes. Martha approached, having finished with her customer. You must be Mr. Xavier, she said, extending her hand. I'm Martha Davis, Belinda's aunt. A pleasure, madam, Kent replied, shaking her hand. Belinda mentioned you're working at the Triple R, Martha continued. Old Jacob Richardson doesn't hire just anyone to work with his prized horses. I've been fortunate to earn his trust, Kent said modestly. Will you be staying in Willow Creek long? Martha asked, ignoring Belinda's warning glance. That depends on the horses, Kent replied, and perhaps other considerations. His eyes briefly met Belinda's before returning to Martha. Actually, I came to ask if Miss Davis might permit me to escort her to the town social this Saturday. Belinda blinked in surprise. The monthly social was a highlight in Willow Creek's calendar, a gathering with music, dancing, and food that brought together folks from town and surrounding ranches. That's very kind, but, she stammered. She would be delighted, Martha interrupted. Wouldn't you, Belinda? Put on the spot, Belinda could only nod. Yes, that would be nice. Kent's smile widened. Excellent. I'll call for you at 6, if that's suitable. After he left, Belinda turned to her aunt. Why did you do that? I barely know him. Which is precisely why you should go to the social with him, Martha replied pragmatically. How else will you get to know him better? Besides, he seems a decent sort, and it's time you started living again, my dear. The town social arrived with perfect weather, warm but not oppressively hot, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers from the surrounding hills. Belinda wore her best dress, a deep blue that brought out the green in her eyes, with her hair partially pinned up in a style Martha assured her was both elegant and fashionable. Kent arrived promptly at 6, wearing clean clothes that, while simple, showed he'd made an effort. His usual trail dust was gone, his dark hair neatly combed, though still slightly too long by Eastern standards. You look beautiful, Miss Davis, he said sincerely when she opened the door. Thank you, Mr. Xavier. You clean up quite well yourself. Martha shooed them off with a reminder not to stay out too late, though her wink at Belinda suggested she wouldn't mind if they did. The social was held in the town square, with lanterns strung between trees, tables laden with food brought by townsfolk, and a small band of local musicians playing lively tunes. Nearly everyone in Willow Creek and the surrounding area had turned out, from the banker's family to ranch hands enjoying a night off. As they approached, Belinda was acutely aware of curious glances. While she wasn't a recluse, she rarely attended social functions with a gentleman escort. Kent seemed oblivious to the attention, or perhaps simply unbothered by it. Would you care for some punch? He asked as they reached the gathering. Yes, please, she replied, grateful for something to do with her suddenly nervous hands. While Kent fetched their drinks, Sarah Turner, the baker's wife and town gossip, sidled up to Belinda. My, Sarah said with a sly smile. Who's your handsome friend, Belinda? I don't believe I've seen him before. Kent Xavier, Belinda replied. He's working at the Triple R temporarily. A cowboy, is he? Sarah's eyes gleamed. And already calling on our quiet Belinda. How interesting. It's just a social, Sarah, Belinda said firmly. Nothing more. Sarah raised an eyebrow. If you say so, dear. Though I must say, he hasn't taken his eyes off you since you arrived. Belinda glanced over to where Kent was returning with 2 cups of punch. Sarah was right. His gaze was fixed on her, with an expression that made her heart beat a little faster. The evening progressed pleasantly. Kent proved to be an excellent dancer, guiding Belinda through reels and waltzes with a natural grace that belied his rugged appearance. Between dances, he introduced her to several of the Triple R hands he'd befriended, all of whom spoke highly of his way with horses. Kent here saved that black stallion Mr. Richardson was about ready to shoot, said a weathered cowboy named Pete. Never seen anything like it. That horse wouldn't let anyone near him for 3 days. Then Kent walks in, talks to him for an hour, and next thing you know, he's leading that beast around like a puppy. It wasn't quite that simple, Kent said modestly. The horse was just scared, not mean. Someone had mistreated him before. You have a gift, Pete insisted, tipping his hat to Belinda before wandering off to find more food. Is it true? Belinda asked as they walked toward a quieter corner of the square. About the stallion? Kent shrugged. Animals respond to kindness and patience. Most people are too rushed to give them either. They found a bench beneath an old oak tree, slightly removed from the main festivities, but still within sight of proper chaperones. The music and laughter created a pleasant backdrop as they sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Thank you for escorting me tonight, Belinda finally said. I've enjoyed myself more than I expected to. Did you expect to have a terrible time? Kent asked, amusement in his voice. No, I just... She paused, considering. I haven't felt much like celebrating lately. Kent nodded in understanding. How are you doing with everything? Belinda appreciated that he didn't specifically mention her diagnosis in such a public setting. Some days are better than others, she admitted. I try not to dwell on it, but then I see mothers with their children in town, and it all comes rushing back. That's natural, Kent said gently. Grief takes time. Is that what this is? Grief? Isn't it? You're mourning something precious you believed you would have. Belinda had never thought of it that way, but he was right. She was grieving for the children she'd never hold, the family she'd never create. The thing about grief, Kent continued, is that it changes over time. It doesn't disappear, but it makes room for other feelings, other possibilities. What other possibilities are there for a woman who can't have children? Belinda asked, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. Kent turned to face her directly. Many, I would think. There are children who need homes. There are lives to be built that look different than we imagined but are no less meaningful. His words touched something deep within her, a tiny spark of hope she'd thought extinguished. You still believe what you said that first day? She asked. That I will have a family someday? I do, he said simply. Though perhaps not in the way you originally pictured. As the music changed to a slower waltz, Kent stood and offered his hand. May I have this dance, Miss Davis? Belinda accepted, and as they moved together among the other couples, she found herself studying this man who had so unexpectedly entered her life. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with bravado. His hands were calloused from work, his face weathered by sun and wind, but his eyes held a kindness that drew her in. You're staring, Miss Davis, he said softly, a smile playing at his lips. "I'm trying to figure you out, Mr. Xavier," she replied honestly. "You're not like most men I've met. Is that good or bad?" "I haven't decided yet," she said, returning his smile. The dance ended, and Kent escorted her back to her aunt's house as the social wound down. At the door, he removed his hat and held it respectfully. "I've enjoyed your company immensely tonight, Miss Davis," he said. "I'd be honored if you would permit me to call on you again." Belinda hesitated only briefly. "I would like that, Mr. Xavier." "Kent," he corrected gently. "If we're to be friends, I'd prefer you use my given name." "Kent," she repeated, liking the way it felt. "Then you must call me Belinda." "Belinda," he said, as if testing the name. "Thank you for a wonderful evening." "Belinda." He tipped his hat and turned to leave, then paused. "The Triple R is having a picnic next Sunday after church. The Hans families are invited. Would you and your aunt care to join us?" "We'd be delighted," Belinda replied, surprised at how much she meant it. Over the next few weeks, Kent became a regular visitor at the Davis home. He would call on Belinda after his day's work, sometimes just for a brief chat on the porch, other times staying for dinner at Martha's insistence. On Sundays after church, they often walked together or joined group outings with other young people from town. Belinda found herself looking forward to his visits, enjoying his stories and perspectives. Kent had traveled extensively throughout the Western Territories and had a way of describing places that made them come alive. He was well-read too, despite his lack of formal education, often surprising her with his knowledge of literature and current events gleaned from newspapers he encountered in his travels. On a particularly pleasant Sunday in late August, Kent suggested a picnic by Willow Creek itself, the waterway that had given the town its name. Martha packed them a basket with fried chicken, biscuits, and her famous apple tarts, then pointedly mentioned she had correspondence to attend to and wouldn't be joining them. "Your aunt isn't very subtle," Kent remarked as they walked toward the creek, picnic basket in hand. Belinda laughed. "No, subtlety has never been Aunt Martha's strong suit. She likes you, though." "I'm glad to hear it," Kent replied. "Her opinion matters to you, so it matters to me." They found a shady spot beneath a large willow tree, its branches creating a curtain that swayed gently in the breeze. Kent spread a blanket on the grass, and they settled in to enjoy their meal. As they ate, Belinda found herself studying Kent again. In the weeks since they'd met, something had shifted between them. What had begun as a chance encounter had grown into a friendship that increasingly felt like something more. "You're staring again," Kent observed, his blue eyes twinkling. "I was just thinking," Belinda said, "about how strange life can be. If I hadn't been so upset that day, if I hadn't run into you on the street." "I believe we would have met somehow," Kent said. "Some things are meant to be." "Do you really believe that?" Belinda asked. "That things are predestined?" Kent considered the question seriously. "Not everything, no. I believe we make choices that shape our paths. But I also believe some encounters have a purpose beyond what we can see at the time." "Like ours?" "Like ours," he agreed softly. A comfortable silence fell between them as they finished their meal. Afterward, Kent suggested they walk along the creek. As they strolled, their hands brushed accidentally, then deliberately, until Kent gently took Belinda's hand in his. She didn't pull away. "Belinda," he said, stopping to face her. "I need to tell you something." Her heart quickened at his serious tone. "What is it?" "Jacob Richardson has offered me a permanent position at the Triple R, as his head horse trainer." "That's wonderful," Belinda exclaimed. "It's a great opportunity." "It is," Kent agreed, "and I'm inclined to accept, but—" "But?" "My decision doesn't just affect me anymore." His eyes held hers steadily. "These past weeks with you have been the happiest I can remember. I find myself thinking about you when we're apart, Looking forward to seeing your smile, hearing your thoughts. Belinda's breath caught. Kent. I'm not a wealthy man, he continued. I've spent most of my life drifting from job to job. But Jacob's offer would mean stability, a future, a home. He took both her hands in his. I need to know if you might see a place for yourself in that future, Belinda. Because if you don't, then perhaps it's better I move on, as I always have before. Belinda looked up at this man who had entered her life so unexpectedly. He was offering her a future, a life with him. But the shadow of her diagnosis still hung over her. You know I can't give you children, she said, her voice catching. You deserve a whole family, not just... Stop, Kent said gently but firmly. I'm asking about you, Belinda, not about children we may or may not have someday. I care for you deeply. I believe I'm falling in love with you. The question is whether you might feel the same. Tears welled in Belinda's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. I do, she whispered. I'm falling in love with you too, Kent. But I'm afraid. Of what? That someday you'll regret choosing a woman who can't give you children. Kent shook his head. That will never happen. And I still believe what I said that first day, you will have a family someday, Belinda. I believe that with all my heart. But even if it's just the two of us, that would be enough for me. More than enough. He reached up to gently wipe a tear from her cheek. I'm not asking for an answer today. Just think about it. About us? Belinda nodded, her heart too full for words. Kent smiled and offered his arm to escort her back to the picnic site. That evening, after Kent had walked her home and bid her goodnight with a gentle kiss on her hand, Belinda sat with Martha on their small porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. Kent has been offered a permanent position at the Triple R, Belinda said, breaking the comfortable silence. I suspected as much, Martha replied. Jacob Richardson was in the shop yesterday. Mentioned how pleased he was with that Xavier fellow's work. Said he hadn't seen someone with such a gift for horses since his own father. He asked me if I could see a future with him, Belinda continued, her fingers nervously pleating her skirt. If I might? If we might? And what did you say? Martha prompted when Belinda's voice trailed off. That I'm falling in love with him. The admission made Belinda's heart race. But I reminded him that I can't have children. Martha sighed deeply. Belinda, my dear, when will you stop defining yourself by what you believe you cannot do? Kent Xavier sees you, all of you, and clearly loves what he sees. But a man wants children, a family. A man wants a partner, first and foremost, Martha corrected. Someone to share his life with, his joys and sorrows. Children are a blessing, yes, but they're not the only blessing in a marriage. Belinda considered her aunt's words. Do you regret never marrying, Aunt Martha? The older woman was quiet for a moment. I had opportunities, she finally said. But the right man never came along, not for me. I've had a good life, Belinda. I've had my shop, my friends, and for these past years, I've had you. That's been enough. She reached over to squeeze Belinda's hand. But if I had met someone who looked at me the way Kent looks at you, I wouldn't have hesitated for a moment. 2 days later, Belinda was arranging a display of ribbons in the shop window when she spotted Kent across the street, deep in conversation with Jacob Richardson. The rancher clapped Kent on the shoulder before they parted ways, Kent heading toward the dress shop. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, removing his hat. Good morning, Belinda, Martha. He nodded to both women. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Martha said. In fact, I was just about to step out for more thread. Belinda, mind the shop, won't you? With a knowing smile, she bustled out, leaving them alone. Your aunt is about as subtle as a stampeding buffalo, Kent said with a chuckle. I've told her the same, Belinda replied, smiling. Did I just see you with Mr. Richardson? You did. Kent stepped closer. I accepted his offer. So you're staying in Willow Creek? Belinda's heart raced. I am. If there's reason enough to stay. His gaze was questioning, hopeful. Belinda had spent the past 2 days thinking of little else but Kent's words by the creek. She'd examined her heart, her fears, and her growing feelings for this kind, steady man. In the end, the answer had become clear. There is, she said softly. There's every reason. Kent's face broke into a radiant smile. He closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. Belinda Davis, I love you. I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me. I will, she whispered. I love you too, Kent. He leaned down, hesitating just a breath away from her lips. May I? In answer, Belinda rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a surge of emotion that left them both breathless when they finally parted. I should probably ask your aunt's blessing, Kent said, his voice husky. She'll give it gladly, Belinda assured him, though she'll pretend to consider it thoroughly first, just to maintain appearances. Kent laughed, the sound warming Belinda from within. Then I'll speak with her today, and perhaps we could be married before winter sets in. Jacob has offered us the use of a small house on the ranch property. So soon? Belinda asked, though the idea filled her with joy rather than trepidation. Too soon? Kent looked suddenly uncertain. We could wait, of course, if you prefer. No, Belinda interrupted. Not too soon. Perfect. In fact, the news of their engagement spread quickly through Willow Creek. Most reactions were positive. Kent had made a good impression during his months in town, and many were pleased to see Belinda finding happiness after years of quiet dedication to her aunt's shop. Sarah Turner, of course, had opinions to share. Rather quick, isn't it? She commented when Belinda was fitting her for a new dress. You barely know the man. I know enough, Belinda replied evenly. I know he's kind and honest. I know he works hard and treats everyone with respect. I know I love him, and he loves me. Sarah's expression softened unexpectedly. Well, when you put it that way, I'm happy for you, Belinda. Truly. The wedding was set for early October, when the aspen trees would be ablaze with golden leaves. Martha threw herself into preparations with enthusiasm, insisting on creating Belinda's wedding dress herself, a creation of ivory silk with delicate lace that transformed Belinda into a vision on her wedding day. The ceremony was held in Willow Creek's small church, filled to capacity with townsfolk and ranchers from the surrounding area. Kent stood at the altar looking both nervous and elated, his usually casual appearance transformed by a new suit ordered specially from Denver. As Belinda walked down the aisle on the arm of Jacob Richardson, who had offered to give her away in the absence of her father, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The shadow of her diagnosis still existed, but it no longer defined her or her future. Kent's eyes never left hers as she approached. When the minister asked who gave this woman in marriage, Jacob's strong voice rang out clearly. I do, on behalf of her family. The vows were traditional, spoken with clear voices and full hearts. When Kent slipped the simple gold band onto Belinda's finger, his hands were steady, his eyes full of promise. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the minister declared. You may kiss your bride. Kent's kiss was tender, respectful of their public setting but conveying a depth of feeling that made Belinda's heart soar. The church erupted in applause as they turned to face their community as husband and wife. The reception was held at the Triple R, with tables set up in the expansive yard of the main house. There was music, dancing, and enough food to feed the entire county, it seemed. As twilight fell, lanterns were lit, creating a magical glow across the celebration. Happy, Mrs. Barson. Xavier? Kent asked, as they shared a quiet moment away from the revelers. Completely, Belinda replied, leaning into his embrace, though it will take some getting used to my new name. You have time, he said, kissing the top of her head. A lifetime, in fact. Later that night, Kent drove them by wagon to their new home, the promised cottage on the Triple R property. It was small but sturdy, with 2 bedrooms, a cozy kitchen, and a front porch that faced the mountains. Kent had spent weeks preparing it, adding touches he thought Belinda would appreciate: curtains at the windows, a rocking chair by the fireplace, wildflowers in a vase on the table. "It's not much," he said as he carried her across the threshold, "but it's ours." "It's perfect," Belinda whispered, taking in the home they would share. Absolutely perfect. Their first weeks of marriage were a sweet adjustment to shared life. Kent left early each morning to work with the horses, returning by dinner time to find Belinda creating their home. She had arranged to continue working at Martha's shop 3 days a week, maintaining her independence while embracing her new role as Kent's wife. In the evenings, they would sit on their porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains, talking about their days or sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. At night, they discovered each other with tender passion, their love deepening with each passing day. As winter approached, bringing the first snowfall to the mountains, Belinda found herself feeling unusually tired. At first, she attributed it to the change in seasons and the adjustment to married life, but when the fatigue persisted and was joined by morning nausea, a different possibility entered her mind, one so improbable she hardly dared consider it. After a particularly difficult morning, Kent insisted she visit Dr. Patterson. "It could be nothing," he said, concern etched on his face, "but I'd rather know for certain." Belinda nodded, though she didn't share the hope that had begun to blossom within her. "I'll go this afternoon," she promised. The doctor's office was quiet when she arrived. Dr. Patterson, a man in his 50s with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, greeted her with surprise. "Mrs. Xavier," he said, still adjusting to her married name. "What brings you in today?" Belinda described her symptoms, watching his face carefully. "I know what you're thinking," she said when he remained silent. "But we both know that's impossible." Dr. Van Patterson stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Would you permit me to examine you?" After a thorough examination that left Belinda blushing, the doctor sat at his desk, making notes. "Mrs. Xavier," he finally said, "I owe you an apology." "An apology? For what?" "For being absolutely, completely wrong." A smile broke across his face. "You're with child, Belinda. About 2 months along, I'd estimate." Belinda stared at him, unable to process his words. "That can't be. You said—" "I know what I said," he interrupted, "and I believed it to be true at the time. But medicine is not an exact science, especially regarding matters of fertility. Sometimes the body heals in ways we don't anticipate or understand." "I'm pregnant?" Belinda whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "You are indeed." Dr. Patterson leaned forward. "It's still early, and given your history, we'll want to be cautious. But yes, you and Kent are expecting a child." Tears filled Belinda's eyes, tears of joy, disbelief, and overwhelming gratitude. "He said I would," she murmured. "That very first day we met, when I was crying outside your office, Kent said I would have a family someday." "It seems your husband is wiser than your doctor," Dr. Patterson said with a self-deprecating smile. "Now, let's discuss how to ensure both you and this miracle baby stay healthy." Belinda left the doctor's office in a daze, her mind racing with how to tell Kent. This news, this miraculous, impossible news, deserved a special moment. She stopped at the general store, purchasing ingredients for Kent's favorite meal. At home, she prepared everything carefully, setting the table with their best dishes and the beeswax candles they'd been saving for a special occasion. When Kent returned home that evening, he paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. "What's all this?" he asked, removing his hat and coat. "I thought we might have a special dinner tonight," Belinda replied, trying to contain her excitement. Kent washed up and joined her at the table, his expression curious. They ate, making normal conversation, though Belinda found it increasingly difficult to maintain the charade. Finally, as they finished dessert, Kent reached across the table to take her hand. "Are you going to tell me what this is all about? Did you see the doctor today?" Belinda nodded, her eyes filling with tears despite her best efforts. "I did." Alarm crossed Kent's face. "What's wrong? Are you ill?" "No," she said, squeezing his hand. "I'm pregnant, Kent. We're going to have a baby." Kent stared at her, his expression transforming from confusion to wonder. "Pregnant? But the doctor said—" "He was wrong," Belinda said simply. "I'm about 2 months along. Dr. Patterson confirmed it today." "A baby," Kent whispered, rising from his chair to kneel beside hers. He placed a gentle hand on her stomach. "Our baby." "You told me I would have a family someday," Belinda said softly. "That first day we met. How did you know?" Kent looked up at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I didn't know. I just believed. I believed in possibilities. In hope." He kissed her tenderly. "And I believed in you, Belinda. In us." As the months passed, Belinda's body changed, her stomach rounding with the growing life within. Kent was attentive and protective, insisting she rest when tired and helping with household tasks, despite the raised eyebrows of some of the other ranch hands. "Let them talk," he said when Belinda mentioned the gossip. "I'm not ashamed to help my wife, especially when she's carrying our child." Martha was ecstatic about the news, immediately beginning work on baby clothes and blankets. "I always knew that doctor was wrong," she declared, though Belinda knew this wasn't entirely true. "This child is meant to be." Spring arrived with fresh green grass and wildflowers dotting the ranch land. Belinda's due date approached as May turned to June. Dr. Patterson visited regularly, pleased with her progress but still cautious given her history. "Everything appears to be proceeding normally," he assured them during a visit in early June. "The baby is in the correct position, and you're healthy, Belinda. I see no reason for concern." Despite his reassurances, both Kent and Belinda couldn't help but worry. A child they had believed impossible was now almost within their grasp. It seemed too precious, too miraculous to fully trust. On a warm night in mid-June, Belinda woke to a sharp pain and a rush of fluid. "Kent!" she gasped, shaking her sleeping husband. "It's time." Kent was instantly alert, helping her change into a clean nightgown before riding to fetch Dr. Patterson and Martha. They arrived within the hour, taking charge of the situation with calm efficiency. The labor was long and difficult. Through hours of pain, Belinda held onto Kent's hand, drawing strength from his steady presence. When despair threatened to overwhelm her, he whispered encouragement, reminding her of how far they'd come, of the miracle they were about to welcome. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "She's perfect," Dr. Patterson announced, placing the swaddled infant in Belinda's arms. "Absolutely perfect." Belinda looked down at the tiny face, overwhelmed by a love so powerful it took her breath away. The baby had a dusting of dark hair like Kent's, and, when she briefly opened her eyes, Belinda caught a glimpse of what might someday be her own green. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Kent sat beside them on the bed, his arm around Belinda's shoulders, his other hand gently touching their daughter's cheek. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "just like her mother." "What will you name her?" Martha asked, wiping away tears of joy. Belinda and Kent exchanged a look. They had discussed names but hadn't settled on one, partly out of lingering fear that something might go wrong. Hope, Belinda said softly. Hope Martha Xavier. Kent nodded, smiling. Perfect. As Dr. Patterson and Martha quietly left the room to give the new family privacy, Belinda leaned against Kent's shoulder, exhausted but happier than she'd ever imagined possible. You kept your promise, she murmured. That very first day, you said I would have a family someday. Kent kissed her temple gently. I just spoke the truth my heart knew, even if my head didn't understand how. You were always meant to be a mother, Belinda. And I was always meant to find you, to love you. Hope made a small sound in her sleep, her tiny fingers curling around Belinda's thumb. Our miracle, Belinda whispered. The first of many blessings, Kent replied. We have a lifetime of them ahead, my love, a lifetime together. As morning light filled their small bedroom, illuminating the three of them in its golden glow, Belinda knew with absolute certainty that Kent was right. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever joys awaited them, they would face them together, the family she had once wept, believing she would never have. Outside their window, the Colorado mountains stood tall against the blue sky, unchanging yet ever-changing, like life itself. A pair of birds flew past, building a nest in the nearby pine tree, creating a home, just as Kent and Belinda had done. And in that moment, holding her daughter while embraced by her husband, Belinda realized that some of life's greatest miracles come not when we demand them, but when we open our hearts to their possibility. 2 years after Hope's birth, the Xavier family welcomed twins, a boy and a girl they named Joseph and Elizabeth. Dr. Patterson declared it nothing short of miraculous, though he had long since learned not to pronounce anything impossible where Belinda was concerned. Kent eventually purchased land adjacent to the Triple R, building a larger home for their growing family while continuing his work with horses. His reputation spread throughout Colorado Territory and beyond, bringing clients eager to have the famous Kent Xavier train their difficult horses. Belinda divided her time between raising their children and helping Martha with the dress shop, which thrived as Willow Creek grew from a small frontier town into a prosperous community. In time, she and Kent established a small horse ranch of their own, specializing in breeding and training quality horses for families and working ranches alike. On warm summer evenings, they would often sit on their porch, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set behind the mountains. In those moments, Belinda would sometimes remember that tearful day outside the doctor's office, when a kind stranger had offered her coffee and a promise she hadn't dared believe. "What are you thinking about?" Kent would ask, noticing her distant smile. And Belinda would take his hand, still strong and calloused after all their years together, and reply simply, "Miracles," and how sometimes they begin with a chance meeting on a dusty street. The cowboy who had said "you will" had been right all along. And in that rightness, in that unfailing belief, Belinda had found not just motherhood, but a love story beyond anything she could have imagined, a love story that, like the Colorado mountains surrounding their home, would stand the test of time, unchanging in its strength, yet ever growing in its beauty.